This time, it isn't the fighter. We have a new best class and some more announcements from the Paizo team in relation to the remaster, so I just wanted to give my quick opinions on a few different ideas before it gets buried under a bunch of other stuff that I want to do. Let's of course start with what I put in the thumbnail. So, new Cleric. You might have expected me to talk about something else if you haven't been following the changes, but they just get the 4 extra slots instead of having to deal with Charisma modifier now. This is a massive change for the Cleric. I do not think I can overstate how big of a deal this is for early game. This doesn't really change their late game, but I have it on good word from Ronald and other people that one of the designers has said that it will scale up to 6 slots at level 15. That's super strong, because if you think about what a Cleric can do now, at most, if they're putting Charisma in fully, they can have a 16 Charisma at level 1, go up to 18 at 5, and then that's where they get the 5 at 5 number, and then 6 at 15. Now mind you, a Cleric currently could get to 7 if they use an Apex item on Charisma as a Cleric, which, honestly, is still an option for them, because of how valuable Charisma is on Clerics in current Pathfinder. But that will not be the case soon. This then frees up Cleric stat distributions to be a lot stronger. So for classes like the War Priest, they now can go 16 Strength, 18 Wisdom, and not feel bad about it. Because they still have a ton of extra healing. They can still do what people expect a Cleric to be able to do. And that means new players are now far less likely to have that stumbling block as a Cleric of, oh, what do you mean Clerics need Charisma? That's not true in any of the other games I play, except maybe original D&D, if you're playing a Druid, because they need that. Anyway, but broadly speaking, the current modern tabletop role-playing game audience does not really think of Clerics as a Charisma-type character. They think of that being the job of the Champion or the Paladin. So I really like this change. I'm just a little bit scared that now Clerics are going to start running all of the show. And it's a pretty minor change. I think that a lot of the other changes for the War Priest specifically are quality of life changes. However, I just want to compare the Cleric to the Sorcerer. Because with the Sorcerer, they get 1 extra slot per level. And that's really strong, so in order to pay for this, they need to have 6 HP per level, they have a worse save progression, and that's the cost that they pay for that. And mind you, they get some really strong focus spells pretty automatically, where Cleric doesn't necessarily get those things. But if you're a Cleric, you get 8 HP, mind you still get armor proficiencies by default unless you're going War Priest, in which case you have other things to worry about. But they have more HP, they have a slightly better save progression, and their power is all capped into those top-end slots for the burst heals, which is always going to be useful. So, I'm a little bit scared that Cleric will become the strongest caster, and we talk about Clerics in the same way we talk about Fighters pre-remaster. Of, well, yeah, but like, there's a lot of other options, they're all valid, but Fighter in a generic scenario is better. And I don't want that to happen for Cleric, however, I do like the fact that the strongest options in the game are support options, and Fighter is a pretty high utility martial with a lot of its feats, particularly when you look at things like Intimidating Strike and things along those lines. As well, my favorite combat grab, Dazing Blow. So I'm glad that if one caster had to be the best, it's Cleric, or Bard, depending on who you're arguing of to, and I think this is a fine change. Like, it just makes Clerics easier for new players. I don't think it makes the class particularly better for the people that have already mastered it, because those are the people that know Wisdom is not necessarily all that you need to be, because as long as you don't use offensive spells, you don't need that high saving throw, so I think this just makes it way easier for new players. Bit of power bump for the class, a little concerning for me, but overall, like it. I also think they've greatly increased the amount of sauce that Witch has, because currently I think that class is utterly and completely sauceless. Because, like, it's all things that you'd use for familiars, and familiars are pretty counterintuitive in how you want to use them. And you need to have a very strong idea, and that's what really made an advanced class, and it wasn't that way because there's a bunch of power at the end of the rainbow, it was there because only a player that knows this game very well can figure out what they're supposed to be doing with the familiar in it. So, I really like a lot of these Witch features. Like, I'm going to just single out on the resentment because this is the one that spoke to me as something very interesting, where it's Familiar of Ongoing Misery, which states that when you cast or sustain a spell, your familiar can curse creatures within 15 feet of it, prolonging a stat effect with a duration on it. Now, a lot of spells, such as Slow, have, on a success, they become that condition 1 for a round. And this can then let you keep that ticking for longer and longer and longer for sustaining another spell. So I could see a witch doing a summon spell, sustaining it, and then trying to cast Slow on the boss repeatedly, and then using that to then tick up this other thing to keep them slowed 1 as they're... I could see Witch having a lot of powerful things that they can do now. And yeah, they're going to be a little bit more strapped for slots compared to the other 6 HP casters, but now they really have something potent to make up for that. And I really like this change. I am not necessarily worried about Witch becoming dominant in the way I'm worried about Cleric. Reason being that Witch will always have a fundamental weakness of its 6 HP. Where Cleric's 8 HP per level makes it a lot more durable than one might expect, because Cleric's 8 HP per level puts it in bulk tier of things like the Rogue that aren't necessarily easy to kill. And if your Cleric's using things like a shield with War Priest and Shield Block, you're going to have a hard time killing them, especially when they're self-healing. So I'm more worried about Cleric taking over the game than I am worried about Witch taking over the game, but I'm really, really happy that Witch players have all these cool abilities that they can use. I might need to roll up a Witch in a game soon, and depending on what they did for the hair feats, I might make a Wrestler Witch guide. Now I need to talk about the thing that is controversial, because they took some power out of the Wizard, which confused a lot of people, but that had to be done for a variety of reasons, notably distancing themselves from the OGL, and making it so that Wizards don't get a crap ton of new toys every single book update, in ways that could be unhealthy for the long-term state of the game. So, and I'm going to compare that to Sorcerers, because Sorcerers have a distinct list for each of their bloodlines. So now Wizards have a distinct list for each of their subclasses, but they also have a line text say, GM can add in more spells if you ask them to have a conversation about it. And I'm personally fine with that. That's fine by me. I just kind of like... I tend to be pretty generous as GM. I talked to Ron how he thinks he's going to do it. My concern is how is this going to get ruled for Society play? Because these spells right now have a few issues in them that you wouldn't have in the larger schools. So, my opinion will definitely be dominated by how is Pathfinder Society play dealing with it. And in order to highlight some of those issues, I'm going to look at the School of Battle Magic. This is as large as I can get it, I'm sorry, but they also have, at first level, Breathe Fire, which is the new Burning Hands, Force Barrage, which is the new Magic Missile, and Mystic Armor, which is the new Mage Armor. All of those spells are really bad when you keep them at level 1. And then you wouldn't really be able to use this level 1 slot that your subclass gives you. Well, unless you're doing some kind of spell blending thing and you're destroying that spell slot with one of your own to then get around that restriction. But locking Battle Magic Wizards to just one subclass if they want to scale feels kind of weird. So I'd really like it if these spells somehow got edited or expanded to also include something that is good in those low-level slots, such as maybe Battle Magic can have True Strike, or if you want to keep the Evocation theme and the Force Generation theme, maybe even Telekinetic Ram, because that's a single-action spell that can get people off of you, so it's pretty useful on late-game Wizards when they're dealing with attack of opportunities. I think that there are options that can be used here, but I'm not fully convinced that I like this change yet. However, if they have a nice ruling for it in Pathfinder Society that I can adopt for my home games, I'm going to be way more okay with this rule. But for now, I'll play with it, I'll use it. It's just that I'm not fully happy with now there's more things to have GMs make a ruling on, but that's all I'm complaining about. I think Wizards will be fine. I'm just going to make that clear. Wizards will be fine. They have extra slots, and you still have more choice in what those extra slots are than something like a Sorcerer would. So I think that fundamentally, Wizard will be fine. But yeah, I just hope that they get something, and that just makes them flow better for each of the school spells, and that there aren't so many spells that require upcasting in those lower level sections. Let's talk about the new maneuver, because now we don't just have disarm, trip, shove, grapple. Now we also have reposition being a fifth. So, reposition is basically shove, but in any direction, and you can't follow them. And it also has an extra line text of, you can't be pushing them into various types of obstacles. I don't know what they're defined by obstacle, because this will determine whether you can reposition them off a cliff. I am inclined to think that you can't. However, reposition will be really nice, because that means you can, and adjacent to somebody, reposition them, get them out of a doorway. That's pretty nice. It's good that we now have an action that can then move somebody out of a choke point, because I feel like that's definitely missing, so it fills a nice little niche there, but it isn't really going to change the power level of unarmed grapple characters too much. There is another change that may be a little bit bigger, though. And for my followers, the fact that I'm talking about this next thing really wouldn't surprise you. And if you aren't... Anyway, multiple attacks with athletics. This line text here changes the entire meta around grapple builds. Well, maybe not the entire meta, but definitely a good section of the meta around grapple builds. Several athletics actions have the attack trait, meaning that using them more than once in the same turn makes them less accurate. Since these actions use your free hand, you use the traits for your fist attack to determine the multiple attack penalty. That was not true before, because you need to have the specific trait of the maneuver in order to do that. Free hand just let you use those maneuvers, and so they never got this reduced multi-attack penalty as if they were agile. So, this means that now, suddenly, if you're an unarmed character, all your athletics maneuvers now get a little bit more accurate if you're trying to do several in a row, and stack these penalties really high, which is what a lot of the athletics caster builds do, because they have worse weapon accuracy, so they naturally lean more on skills. That's potent. So, as such, I'm a big fan of this, and I think it doesn't take away power from the current builds that are perceived as the strongest, and buffs something that people don't see as strong. And I really like that. Again, I like it when support options are better. I think that going for support options should be stronger than just going for damage in absence of support options. And what this does is it enables a specific type of unarmed grappler character. And I specifically think this will be incredible on grappler rangers. Because now, the ranger can go, okay, trip, combat grab, and then one of the maneuvers in wrestler that then modifies what the grapple does, to then just have this massive effect on them, and they're only doing it at like a -4 penalty total. And that's absurd. I do not think I can overstate how big this is for specifically the Grappler Flurry Rangers and the Monk Grapplers. I don't necessarily think this will help the Monk Wrestler type things, but if they want to do more of those like athletics maneuvers, I think that this might make Wrestlers slightly better on Monk, because now a lot of those things that have an effect if you repeat grapple someone are now a lot stronger from the Agile. But I don't think it'll change how I've been playing Wrestler, which has been mostly focusing on combat grab, suplex, re-combat grab type stuff and that type of flow pattern. But yeah, I really like that change, because also this rule's pretty counterintuitive how it is right now. Because my fist is agile, I'm using my fist to trip them, why isn't this agile? It has been a question I've had to answer several times. I've always needed to go into the very gamification of, well, it doesn't technically have the trip. Now it's agile. That's very good. And this also states that if the trip axe that you're using, or whatever, does not have agile, it still is not agile because you're using the axe trip rather than your fist. Right. Unarmed characters just got better. The wrestler archetype just got better. I'm happy. I'm happy. That's it.